So I like Frasier a lot. I was gonna show all of my Frasier merch, but it's kind of all over the place, and I don't feel like going to find it because my dog's been throwing up foam on my blanket. But I have, I think, the first 2 seasons on DVD. I have a book. I had a shirt that said it's a Frasier thing you wouldn't understand that my mom gave me. There's my dog yagging again. Great. That she got me, I think, in middle school, and I wore it once and then never again for fear that I would get beaten up. I also have a tape somewhere of How Green Was My Valley to show how weird I actually am about this. In fact, I almost went as far as to get an official Washington State license plate that said Road Warrior after the season 7 episode Road Warrior, where Martin gets Winnebago, and that's the license plate he gets for it. But that's like $170, and I don't think my wallet's that committed to the bit, to be honest with you. But don't steal my idea. So originally I had written down this like long-winded intro about the inception of Cheers and how Frasier came about and all of that stuff. But let's be honest, if you're watching a video that's rating the new season of Frasier, I don't think you need any sort of introduction. This show is definitely mostly geared towards people who watch the original. I don't really know how newcomer friendly it is, considering on its own it's kind of an okay show. Spoiler alert, that's my ranking. It's an okay show. In context of the original show, it's not great. So, there we go. That's my whole review. You don't have to watch the rest of the video now, I guess. So I had written down some predictions before I watched them. And I say this, and it's kind of, to me, it's kind of important to say that Frasier as a standalone, I think, is a really good show. I can't really comment on how good it is in comparison to Cheers because I still have not watched all of Cheers. I did not know that Cheers was a thing when I first watched Frasier at like 12. Martin's actor's death being a pivotal point, Niles and Daphne's kid at least cameoing, as well as Roz's daughter Alice, and then maybe Niles would show up at least once, if not one of the original Cheers members. Knowing what I know now, not too bad, not too bad. So, first impressions of the first episode, it feels a little clunky, but I suppose that's to be expected, especially since it's been so long. Kelsey Grammer, I think, does a pretty decent job getting back into the character. You can tell he likes playing Frasier, which is good. I'm very glad for him. So far, I do love David, and I was right. Their kid came back. I didn't remember that his name was David, but I did remember that they had a son. So, I don't know why, but they've made Olivia really weirdly thirsty for Freddie, and the concept, I guess, is not what I find weird. It's just the way that she delivers her line. I don't know if it's the writing or the way that she delivers the stuff. It's just kind of, it doesn't really do anything for me. What I really am not a fan of is Freddie's character. He comes off as kind of a wannabe Chandler Bing, and that kind of snappy humor and sarcasm and all of that. And I mean, you know, you kind of had a blank slate with him because the only character development you got was like, oh, he went through an emo phase in his teens, and that's pretty much it. Or goth phase, sorry. And I mean, you know, Chandler Bing is the best character in the show, but ultimately, it's friends. So you could argue that Freddie is an obvious parallel to Martin, who was not a very likable character in the first episode, since Freddie is obviously the Martin stand-in for this. The whole premise, basically, is a reverse of the original, where instead of the reluctant relative coming to Frasier, he comes to them, which I think, you know, obviously has some interesting ideas that Frasier, in some ways, turns into his father, kind of estranged from his son, and then the roles reverse, where Frasier kind of gets a taste of his own medicine, but the other way. So it's kind of like having to bond with his dad all over again, I suppose. But I don't know. He doesn't hit the same way John Mahoney. I don't think anybody could ever get the same level as John Mahoney did. I miss that guy. Speaking of John Mahoney, there is an after credits little tribute to him And it's just him saying it'll all work out. But it made me cry. So, but I cry at everything, so take that as you will. Also in this episode, Freddy lives with this girl Eve who was dating a guy that Freddy worked with who died, and they had a son together. And for a little bit, Frasier thinks that the son is Freddy's kid, so they were trying to get a little bit of a classic Frasier misunderstanding right off the bat. But I don't know, it's not that big of a point, I guess. It's resolved pretty quickly. This episode starts off with a 2-part Baby Shark joke, which is very neat, very with the times. I don't even think in 2023 that was relevant. John's keeping everybody up until Frasier comes in and Eve finds out that his voice puts him to sleep. And then right when we get some actually decent Frasier frustration going, the Baby Shark joke comes back again. I really hope this isn't a theme.
Moving in with your dad at 33 is not exactly catnip for ladies.
There's catnip for ladies?
We have a couple of Martin's Chair style "you're putting this here" jokes. They've turned Frasier soothing John into a subplot about Frasier believing Eve is secretly in love with him, but all I can think of is how much I want an air hockey dining table. We get some actually decent Frasier psychoanalyzing himself about how his relationship with Freddy reminds him of his relationship with his dad, so I suppose it all ties together. Now it turns out that Freddy told his coworkers that his father died, which I believe is a callback to Cheers, where he either never mentioned Niles or said that he was dead. Because I swear that was a joke in the series, where one of the members of Cheers come back and he's like, you mentioned your brother was dead or something like that. I don't remember. Better than the first though. So we're actually starting to get some good solid ground for this season. David's taking Frasier for his first day of teaching in Harvard, and it goes about as well as expected. Students are asking for personal advice or Googling his net worth.
I am here to lead you on a challenging academic odyssey. And if you are here for any other reason, then I invite you to leave now.
Let me guess, everybody's gonna... Oh no, actually only about half the class left. Okay. We actually get some insight into his TV show that apparently went on for 14 seasons, and it ends up having some actually interesting commentary on how, for lack of a better term, televised these concepts can be.
I don't know if you've ever dealt with a sibling with whom you have a very intense and competitive relationship.
God, I really want to like Freddy, but he just quips after everything, and it feels like it just kind of drags things down.
Very funny. Very droll.
Yeah, pretty much.
Didn't you and Uncle Niles once have a restaurant you quit after like one day?
I don't have anything to say, I just really like that callback. Frasier tries to use Eve as a way to show off to his class, but it goes about as well as you'd expect when David realizes he's not the one who gets to help.
She's only here because my uncle pays for an apartment for her and her baby.
So Olivia tells Frasier he was a big inspiration. He decides to stay, problem solved. A lot of the conflicts in this series get resolved fairly quickly and don't come up later. Frasier gets onto a trivia team with Olivia and Alan to go against Freddy and his team.
Frasier, were you ever bested?
I believe the answer to that trivia question is hell no.
So anyway, Frasier loses to his own son. He makes the mistake of saying he's surprised Freddy's just a firefighter, and it becomes the main point of contention, which is where Freddy's Chandler Bingness truly shines through.
Oh, wait, remind me. Do I put the pants on one leg at a time, or where am I?
Just cut that out.
Frasier has kind of a heart-to-heart with Eve, where we find out he's actually just really worried for Freddy's safety, kind of the same way he was worried about his own dad's safety as a police officer. So it ends with Freddy getting to tell Frasier about the fire he had just handled the night before.
I'm gonna freak out if I'm not included real soon.
This is the most relatable I think Frasier's ever been. So Frasier, Alan, and Olivia are competing for 2 open slots in the Founders Society. Olivia is all but confirmed to get a spot, leaving Frasier and Alan to battle it out, which culminates in them getting locked in a cellar. But it's fine, Alan was actually bluffing the whole time and there wasn't even a door to lock, which might be a little concerning for Frasier's spatial awareness. There really isn't much going on in this episode. Eve sets up both Freddy and Frasier with blind dates. One of them shows up and they can't figure out who she's there for since she hits on both of them. It's eventually revealed that she's there for Freddy, but it's more into Frasier. Frasier's actual date shows up and Frasier gets caught trying to bribe Freddy to go out with his date since Freddy had already decided to step aside and let Frasier have her. They both leave. The end. Frasier finds out that instead of going to the opera with him, Freddie is hanging out with his mom and Frasier's ex-wife Lilith, who asks Alan what we've all been wondering since episode 1.
Who are you?
Turns out Freddie invited her to his birthday party instead of Frasier, but because Lilith and Frasier start arguing, he officially disinvites them both before Eve guilt trips him into re-inviting him. They get into a fight and get thrown out. Afterwards, they talk. Then more than talk.
I'll take Christmas, you take Thanksgiving.
Deal.
Frasier decides to try and earn the professor title, which does not start off well when the board member he's supposed to be impressing thinks he's a drunk. Later, in trying to make it up to him, Frasier invites him to coffee with Alan, Olivia, and David. Before he even arrives, things become complicated when Alan dumps his rum in one of the cups of coffee on a lazy Susan that David proceeds to move around, so then the cups get mixed up, and Provost ends up with the rum. He immediately recognizes there's alcohol in the coffee and leaves. Later on, Frasier gets stung by a bee and shot with an EpiPen, but refuses to go to the hospital, instead opting to go to the board meeting because he's trying to impress Provost with some homemade honey buns, because he mentioned once that he likes honey buns, which is kind of me. I get it. But because of the side effects of the shot, everyone thinks he's drunk, so he gets put on probation. I've been avoiding discussing some of the elements like the B plots just because I don't want to spoil too much of the show for those who do want to watch it, and a lot of them kind of don't matter. And if you're wondering, no, the probation thing does not come back at all. So there's a lot, like I said, a lot of things are kind of like that. There's also a part where David is withholding the EpiPen to give a speech on why the paper Frasier gave a B deserves better, and you can tell they were trying to capture that manic Niles energy. It's okay. I just feel like David's actor might be holding back a little. You can tell David Hyde Pierce absolutely did not hold back a little. In fact, I'm sure everybody was hyping him up to go further, kind of like John Lithgow in 30 Rock, Third Rock from the Sun, because he was a stage actor and he was worried about his kind of breakout role in television because he thought he had to be more subdued, but the director kept telling him no, keep pushing farther. So I wouldn't doubt that that's kind of what happened. Freddie feels insecure about the fact he lives with his dad, and Frasier never lets him do anything around the house, so Frasier enlists him to help him with repairs around the complex. He ends up hurting his leg after he called the plumber so that Freddie wouldn't have to fix more of the apartment. Freddie gets offended that he wasn't allowed to help, and we find out that Frasier's worried about letting Freddie help since he wasn't exactly there for him when he was younger and still feels like he owes him. Freddie, meanwhile, has finally learns he's kind of smug when he's right about things, prompting him to go back and have a little talk with his dad, who's now given him the okay to continue fixing things around the place. And Frasier learns to let Freddie help after he hurt his other leg. Typical Frasier fashion, I feel like. It's Christmas time, and already we have an actually really cute callback. Frasier and Freddie decide to throw a big Christmas party, and instead of ordering 24 chairs and one Christmas tree, it turns out he got those reversed. So now Frasier's paranoid things are going to turn out badly. So now Freddie's going back and forth between reassuring him and checking in on Eve since it's her first Christmas without her boyfriend / Freddie's old coworker. Then it turns out he accidentally hired an elementary school string quartet. And while he's also dealing with the fact that the goose he ordered is very much alive, everyone leaves to hang out at Eve's apartment. And I can't lie, I felt actually really bad for him. So naturally, Frasier shows up and chews everyone out at the other party.
You know, crane parties have always had their little setbacks. A dead seal, a bird on the head.
Then he goes back to his apartment to spend some time alone thinking about his dad. Meanwhile, Freddie had been alluding to a big gift for Frasier, which turns out to be Roz. This would have been more of a surprise if she wasn't literally in the thumbnail of the episode. She and Frasier head to the bar and talk about things like Martin and Roz's daughter Alice. It feels very true to character. I like this scene. It's cozy. She convinces Frasier to join the party at Eve's, and it turns out everyone went back to Frasier's to surprise him. He apologized to Freddie, and that's episode 10. Overall, it took a bit, but I think I've warmed up to the show. It for sure gets better as it goes on. I'm not gonna say it gets as good as season 1 Frasier. I almost made this into a video where I compared season 1 of the remake to season 1 of the original. I can't really say remake. It's not a remake. It's continuation. But everybody calls it a remake. I don't know, though. I don't necessarily see people being as fond of David as they are Niles. I mean, I liked him pretty well, but nothing's gonna replace Niles. And I think that's a big thing with the show, is a lot of it is we've grown so used to these old characters, and you just can't replace them, and they try, David is a stand-in for Niles, Freddy is a stand-in for Martin. Even if they weren't necessarily meaning for that to happen, everybody's gonna make the comparison because we've become used to those guys for 11 years. Although I haven't seen season 2 yet, so maybe none of this applies and the show is incredible now, or it's worse. Obviously it did not get renewed for a 3rd season, so chances are not good, methinks. I will say, if season 2 gives me Bob Bulldog Briscoe, all of the flaws that I've mentioned, null and void.